So this morning, the breaking news in Riyadh, not just a capital, but now a diplomatic stage where history is rather awkwardly and rather astonishingly pirouetted. There in the gleaming marble halls of the royal palace, President Donald Trump has shaken hands with Ahmed al-Shara, the newly installed Syrian president, the former Islamist guerrilla. It was the first meeting between a US president and a Syrian head of state in over 2 decades, the last being Bill Clinton's ill-fated tango with Hafez al-Assad. And the real architect of this meeting was not in the room. He was on a secure video call from Ankara, President Erdogan, who appears to have pulled off the diplomatic equivalent of a rabbit from a fez. Turkey has long viewed itself as the fulcrum of regional stability, or perhaps more accurately, regional brokerage, and Erdogan's deft choreography in persuading Trump to meet with al-Shara was not merely a favour to Damascus, it was a global masterstroke. Let's recall that Turkey hosted several rounds of back-channel negotiations over the past year, particularly following Assad's flight from Syria in December. Erdogan, who once labelled Assad a butcher, pivoted with curious elegance to endorse his successor, al-Shara, despite the latter's murky past affiliations with al-Qaeda and ISIS. And Turkey's interest is pragmatic: border security, influence over Kurdish militias, and access to lucrative post-war reconstruction contracts. Erdogan's call for the lifting of sanctions, now achieved, opens doors to both Turkish contractors and political capital. And Trump's Riyadh announcement, made with much fanfare and applause at a Saudi investment forum, was characteristically dramatic. We will be dropping all of the sanctions on Syria, he declared, which I really think is going to be a good thing. And with that, the Assad-era restrictions, the assets which have starved Syria of investment and driven it into Russia's arms, were lifted and released. Make no mistake, this was a strategic U-turn, not a somersault. Well, it was a somersault, actually. It was a series of acrobatics worthy of Billy Smart. Syria remains on the US list of state sponsors of terrorism, but Shara himself was only recently delisted from American sanctions. But Trump has never been squeamish about diplomacy with devils, so long as there's applause and an economic deal in the offing. And at the heart of this reversal is not ideology but investment. Trump's administration is pushing for new US-Syrian trade agreements announced today, particularly around Syria's oil, phosphates and rare earth reserves, and Gulf investors are already circling. And Erdogan has promised Turkish logistical and industrial support. This meeting marks the birth, or perhaps the cautious trial marriage, of a new regional configuration. Riyadh, Ankara and Washington, each with a vested interest in stabilizing Syria under a regime not beholden to Iran or Russia. And Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman hosted the talks and clearly revelled in the spectacle. For him, Syria represents a diplomatic coup, reclaiming an Arab brother from Tehran's orbit, and Erdogan wants the same: less Persian influence, fewer Kurdish enclaves, more commercial prospects. For Trump, it's another performance in his preferred theatre, the art of the deal, a handshake in Riyadh, promises of normalization, and a suggestion that Syria might even join the Abraham Accords. This is his kind of diplomacy. Where does he go to next? Of course, that's the next question. Does he come to does he come to Rome via Istanbul on Thursday? Because he will almost certainly. I cannot imagine that he would not be in Rome for the inauguration of the Pope on Sunday. So either he's got something else up his sleeve that he's going to do, or he is inevitably going to turn up in Istanbul and then in Rome. Or he's just going to sit on the presidential plane. This is hardly a fairy tale. Shara, though newly minted as a president, carries a huge amount of ideological baggage and martial scars. Ethnic clashes still erupt in northern Syria. Druze, Kurds, Christians remain wary. And meanwhile, Israel has not softened its posture, maintaining aerial strikes and defensive positions along the Golan Heights. Nor should we overlook that Trump's move is diplomatically heretical in some quarters, namely in Washington and Jerusalem. The decision to lift sanctions without guarantees on governance, on justice, or accountability undermines decades of bipartisan consensus on Syria. Turkey, meanwhile, walks a fine line. It wants both Western praise and Eastern leverage. And Erdogan may have orchestrated this rapprochement, but he will now be expected to deliver on promises to restrain terror groups and mediate a genuine reconstruction plan. Erdogan's influence has never been more sharply felt. Turkey is not only a regional power broker, it's become the curator of post-conflict diplomacy. By shepherding Syria out of exile and into Trump's diplomatic embrace, Erdogan has reshaped the calculus of Middle Eastern politics. Whether this is a moment of peace or merely a prelude to fresh instability remains to be seen. But one thing is certain. Trump has got his photograph, Erdogan has got his leverage, al-Shara has got his lifeline, and let's hope that Syria gets something more than just symbolism, and let's hope that this is a sign of a gathering momentum towards peace, which might be given even a bigger fill-up on Thursday. Who knows? But this is modest success.